This is Mission Qualfon, a monthly podcast that takes you inside the workings of our company, but not just the ins and outs of business. We look at the ideas and insights that make Qualfon truly unique. As a company, we are committed to being the best and making each person's life better. Join us as we get to know and learn from people from across the organization. What's their story? What have they learned? And how do they live out Qualfon's mission? Welcome to Mission Qualfon. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to the Mission Qualfon podcast. I'm Jeremy, and I'm here with my partner, Marisol.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing great and really looking forward to this episode.
And it's a special episode, Jeremy.
It is a special episode, and so let me set this up just a little bit. So a number of years ago, this would have probably been 2014, 2015, I had the chance to meet our guest, and it seemed like over about a 6-month period, maybe a year-long period, Alfonso and I crossed paths quite a bit. So we got to spend time together in San Antonio a few times. We met in some other places a few times, and also, and we're gonna hear about this in the episode. Alfonso spent some time up here in North Idaho in the sites that I've worked around up here. Our guest on this episode today is the son of our founder. This is Alfonso Gonzalez Jr., who is joining us. Now, Alfonso spent a few years working for Qualfon in various roles, getting a look at the company in lots of different areas. Great education. That alone has been a great education, I'm sure. But he's currently technically not working for Qualfon, but is finishing up his MBA at Georgetown. Yet he accepted the invitation to join us on the podcast here today. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. This will be a good chat that we'll have with Alfonso, and we'll talk about a lot of different things. So Alfonso, welcome to the podcast. We're super excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I am really happy to be here. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank both of you for all the effort of the podcast. I've been listening to the episodes, especially now in the MBA that I'm a bit farther away from the Qualfon the day-to-day operation. So I've definitely been enjoying the Mission Qualfon podcasts.
Thank you. That's awesome to know that you've listened to it. We enjoy doing it. I do have a question. Is it weird to hear people talk about the company, your family, the evolution of it over the last 28 years? Is that like does it bring you joy, or could it be a little odd at times?
To be honest, to me, it's not weird. It definitely brings joy. The way I see it, everyone is part of the mission. So it's not weird to listen to, people discussing about the mission. It's just so much joy, and you learn from everyone. The mission has been evolving, along the years, and every person that experienced the mission brings something new, so something more profound. So it's just so enriching to hear and listen and learn from everyone in the company about the mission. So to me, it's not weird.
Okay, good. That makes me happy.
Alfonso, obviously the podcast is called Mission Qualfon, so we talk about the mission a lot. For someone who's not familiar with Qualfon, how would you explain our mission?
Well, I think the mission in its essence is to care deeply for all the members of Qualfon, their families, and their communities. And our summarized official version statement is to be the best and make each person's life better. And what I really like of our mission is that it has been evolving through the years, becoming more profound. Really, with the help of every mission leader, we have been able to perfect every day how we communicate and execute our mission. So just to give you an example, not too long ago, our mission talked about helping people And, all the team reflected and decided that persons really meant, what we had in our hearts in the mission. We want to help each person at their own individual level, helping every person achieve their total vocation, not refer to everyone as groups of people. So that's just one quick example on the constant reflection that our leaders have on the mission, since it's really the heart and purpose of Qualfon.
I haven't had the pleasure to work with you in the past. I know Jeremy has. I have had the pleasure of working with your brother, JP, in the past and getting to know him. And I've met your father, and I got to meet some of your family at Summit. When I got to meet JP, I got to work with him for a few days and spend some time with him. And I remember coming home, and my oldest daughter at the time was 17, and I was so blown away by this young gentleman and just his heart and his intelligence and his listening skills. And he was very young at the time. And I came back to my oldest daughter and I was like, I think I've met this gentleman who is like the personification of a well-raised young man, like someone I would want my daughter to meet someone like that in her future. And she was 17 at the time, very young. But I remember just being so impressed by JP, which in turn made me impressed by his parents, because I know that comes from how he was raised.
Thank you for your comments, Marisol. You're very kind. And I completely agree. JP is a very well-rounded, brilliant person. And as you know, we are somewhat of a big family, and I'm very proud of all my siblings.
I just always think about your family and go like, what would it be like to be at the dinner table with this family? Because I just imagine it is just full of conversation, topics like self-actualization, total vocation, discussing this mission. What is that like?
I mean, we are a normal family. We, of course, sit down at the table and have fun, talk about sports and what is going on in each of our lives. But putting that aside, I do have to mention that my siblings and we are very blessed because, our parents have been very active in our education since we were young. They are, as you know them, Marisol, very loving, spiritual parents. And I think what I can share is that since we were young in elementary school, our parents got us together and we started working on what it's called what they called a life plan. And we sat, together in a room, and every one of us, we discussed about the most important aspects in our lives at that point, at that age, social, spiritual, sports, academic, in the family, and we laid out what are our goals for the next year, and we did this every year, and then you can see and measure how you did the previous year, what do you have to work more on. So it was a very conscious education on trying to be better, taking advantage of any opportunities, being very grateful, and just doing the best that we can. And I think that is how we grew up. Our parents were very active in our education, and we owe a lot to them.
And then just to touch upon the last part of your question, that I think it was about the mission, just like Qualfon, we have a family mission, and in a similar way, the family mission has evolved over the years with a lot of reflection. And I'm not completely sure if this is the most accurate translation, but our family mission is a continuous formation to fulfill in the best way possible and with unconditional love each of our individual missions as a family. So here in our family mission, you can see a lot of the elements of the Qualfon mission as well. A continuous formation, always striving to be, well prepared to do our best in the best possible way with, unconditional love, putting that love element in it. It ties directly to, caring of the person in the Qualfon mission. And, it also touches upon our individual missions. Each of my siblings, each of us have a different mission. So this touches upon our personal vocation, achieving our total vocation, and with the support, of course, of the family. And so these are different mission, but very tied together in essence with the Qualfon mission.
Do you understand that many of us would like to be adopted by your parents, even those of us that are much too old to even think about it? No, that's a wonderful answer. And I feel that I know one thing about you just from getting ready to do this podcast, and I think it's relevant to your family, is you all seem very thoughtful. You really put in a lot of thought and behind anything, a question that is posed to you, you think about it, you pray on it, you meditate, you think on it. You're all very, very thoughtful. It seems like a wonderful family. And congratulations, because I believe you have grown the family in the last year, haven't you?
Yes, thank you. I have to tell you that the timing worked perfectly because the baby is asleep. So at any moment, this might be the episode where crying baby shows up. So, but hopefully the plans are for the baby to be asleep for the podcast, so we can have a good discussion. But yes, Alfonso the third arrived 7 months ago. So very happy.
Oh, congratulations.
So, Alfonso, you, I'm just trying to think back timeline. You, I think, were born, but you were very young when Qualfon started, right? And do I have that timeline? You had been born, but you were very young when your dad started the company, correct?
Yes. I was born in 1993 in Monterrey. Okay. And then when I turned 1 year old, around that time, we moved to Mexico, for the efforts to start the company. And Qualfon was founded in 1995. So I was super, super young.
You have literally grown up with the company. So you have seen, from the very early days through, you have witnessed that whole scope, right? From the very beginning. And so my question is, when did you realize that your father was running a successful company? Part of this is a question about, just growing up, right? Coming into the realization of that. But I guess the bigger part of the question is, what was it like when you realized that, okay, I'm going to play a role in this company in the future, whatever that might be? You've already spent some time working for the company. You're taking some time off now to finish your MBA, but you will be part of the future of this company. What do you think about that? What, as you were growing up, as I'm just trying to think, I've got young teenagers now, and I'm trying to think, as a teenager, if I was 12 years old, if I was 14 years old, and I'm beginning to realize I'm going to be part of this company in the future. I'm just wondering what that was like for you. Was that something that you were excited about? Something that scared you? What were your thoughts about knowing you were going to be part of the future of a company like Qualfon?
Well, to be honest, I think it really happened in phases. And the first event that I recall on this realization was around 2006, and I was around 13 to 14 years old here. And just to give some context, Qualfon started with some partners, and around this time, my parents felt that they were feeling in their hearts that they needed to buy the rest of Qualfon to really take to the extent that they were feeling in their prayers the mission of Qualfon. And I was very young, but I was able to see just how difficult this decision was for my parents. And I saw them praying a lot, discerning a lot. And after running the company for some years, they probably were in a more comfortable position. I remember when our first car that I remember was a white, old white Volkswagen Beetle, and certainly our situation as a family was better around this time. But going forward with this decision meant that my parents had put everything that they had done at risk. They even had to get some debt. So it was a huge a huge decision that they were reflecting, but they really believed in their hearts that it was God's calling. And once again, for my siblings and I, this was a huge example of faith, trusting God, and telling us that we're here to help others and not just live comfortably. And funny story here is that when this was all happening, I was very, very young, and when my dad shared these details with me, I asked him almost every day, what's happening, what's going on, is this done, has this is this finished? I clearly didn't have any knowledge of business negotiations, because for me, this definitely took too long, but it was just normal. Now I realized that this was very normal for business negotiations. But closing the loop on the realization of the growth of the company, then probably the other most relevant event was when I visited the Philippines. And of course, I have visited other sites. I visited, the site in Mexico with frequency. I went to the annual Mexican posadas where I, could, see the team. But I have never been to a mega site. I probably didn't even know what a mega site was. And when I went to the Philippines for the first time, just seeing a mega site, seeing thousands of persons working, seeing, important logos, all of what that takes to happen, I think that's when I realized that it was that my parents were running a significant company. But I also realized of the big responsibility that they had to really take care of every person.
I have another question that I'm interested in, is from your perspective, watching the growth of the company. And I mean, I've been with the company 4 years this tenure, and I've seen massive changes occur in the last 4 years. What's that experience like, being family-owned business, but also you're kind of like a historian or a watcher and see the ebb and the flow of the business and the different acquisitions. What is that like?
It has been really a blessing and a privilege. The company has been in constant transformation from the time that at the beginning, for the first years that my dad was a CEO, to now that Mike Mauro has been our CEO for the past years. The company has become much larger, has become much stronger and robust company. The times where we have had acquisitions and understanding the process and all the effort that it takes to make it all happen. I think right now, correct me if I'm wrong, we're around 16,000 persons working in Qualfon, and it's just a huge joy to see that as the company has grown, the mission has really been growing even faster. That for me has been fascinating to watch.
I don't know if you're aware, but I'm working with Roberto on the second book, Answering the Call. And there was a book written, Answering the Call, book 1, which tells the story of your father, the consecration of the company, the first, I would say, like the beginnings of the company. And I feel like overwhelming pressure to tell the story of your father and of the mission and of Qualfon, to the point that sometimes I it affects my sleep. And that's just me writing a book, which is an important job, but I remember going to Cuatro Ciénegas this year and meeting many people who have benefited from so many of the things that your parents have done and put into place. And it's just this overwhelming sense of, I want to do right by this incredible story of the mission. And I should point out, Jeremy, we went right into this podcast talking about the mission, and the three of us know what that means. But we probably should repeat it again for someone who's just joining us for this first time on the podcast, because it is this big idea of being the best and make each person's life better, to every interaction that we have, to be the best versions of ourselves. It's not your normal, it's not the normal, as duties assigned that you find in a job description.
Right.
It's a huge responsibility. And if I feel that as an employee, I imagine, Alfonso, that must just be overwhelming for you at times, thinking about the legacy of Qualfon, the legacy of your father, the legacy of this mission. If I'm feeling it just writing a book, I can only imagine what that must be like for you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the pressure of this family-owned business? Because that's a big pressure.
I think the best way that I deal with it is by, praying a lot and working hard. That is what I think I learned from my parents, and really my siblings and I, as a second generation, we have a huge responsibility of protecting the mission and ensuring the third generation grows and also protects the mission. That is a huge treasure. So really just, understanding how big of a treasure the mission is, when I think of that, it increases the pressure. But also, on the other hand, Qualfon has a great and capable team that believes in the mission. So knowing that we're not alone really helps.
So we have a recurring theme on this podcast, Alfonso. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but I would guess probably at least 50% of our guests have started out as agents in a contact center somewhere. And the reason I bring that up, Marisol, and you might not even be aware of this, but Alfonso, and you'll have to correct the record, Alfonso, if I misspeak here, but Alfonso spent several years learning various parts of the Qualfon organization. So he has worked in lots of different areas within the company. Well, one of the things he did, he went through new hire training for one of our accounts at one of our North Idaho contact centers. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the trainer was the only person who really knew who Alfonso was, that knew Alfonso was the son of our founder. I think the rest of the class just kind of assumed, here's this nice guy, Alfonso, that's starting work as an agent like the rest of us. So he had the experience of going through the entire new hire process. I think you even worked as an agent for a while. My question for you is, what was that like? What was that like, going through the same experience that all new employees go through, and then actually going on to the floor and being an agent? What did you think of that experience?
You're absolutely right, Jeremy. My agent experience happened during college as an internship, and timing was great. It worked perfectly because Qualfon had just acquired a company at that time, and so I had never visited that site, so nobody knew me there, and I wanted to have an authentic experience. So that was great. As you know, agents make up the majority of the Qualfon family, and they perform one of the most relevant and important jobs for our clients. They are the persons that really solve the problems for the clients of our clients. So I started just like anybody else in training, learning the systems, having some tests, and I have to accept that I was a bit nervous for my first live call. I quickly realized that that this is not an easy job. It requires a lot of self-control. More often than not, when people call, they have an issue, so they're not particularly happy. I remember still very vividly how one time, as I pick up the phone and I answer, thank you for calling, the person straight up said that they wanted to talk to a U.S. citizen. They picked up that I had an accent, and they didn't want to talk to me. So I told the person to allow me the opportunity to support them, and after some time I was able to resolve the issue. It was not difficult. They just wanted someone else because of the accent. So you realize that some callers sometimes yell at you because of what they went through. Sometimes they discriminate you, and all you have to do is give them your best and really solve their problem. And sometimes when you're feeling great, this is easy. Sometimes when you're having personal issues, this can become a real challenge. So Fortunately for me, I had a great support of my team. My trainer was amazing. My operations manager was amazing. And all the team was great. My peers, the other agents were great. Also a great source of support. And because of that, I was able to improve every day. But this was really a great experience for me and eye-opening. And I realized after that, how much I value now and respect that work more than ever.
What other areas of the company, because I know you've spent time working in various parts of the company, and this will be a hard question, but what were some of the other eye-opening things that you were able to experience, over the years you spent at Qualfon working in different departments and doing different things? Are there any other things that stand out at you as things that were really maybe a surprise, maybe a pleasant surprise, maybe harder than you thought? Anything that jumps out at you over that time that you spent working in various parts of the company?
After college, and I started in Qualfon, and as you mentioned, I did one full year of a rotational experience in almost every department. And I think that I started with the mission, the mission office.
The best department, Alfonso. I should throw that in there.
Yeah, the best department. And I had right in my first days as officially part of Qualfon, I had an experience that I learned, a lesson. I also continue to learn about, the mission and growing that. And I had the privilege of going to Guyana with Roberto Sanchez, our chief mission officer. And, he gave me a very important life lesson. We were arriving to Guyana, and he, from in the site, a person like the site director tells me that there is this person that has some medical issues that he wanted to talk to me. And to be honest, I didn't know what to do. It was my first visit. I was right off, college, not experienced, and I got nervous. And I was lucky that I had Roberto, and I told him that, I didn't know what to do when I talked to this person. And Roberto said, no, don't worry, I'm happy to go with you. So we both went to meet, this person. And Roberto walks a little bit faster, and he sees the person and just gives him a huge hug of, you can see, those hugs that, you can see, a big heart. And then we just had a conversation with that person. We prayed, and I realized that's our mission is to, to take care, to give love. I was, thinking, how can I fix a medical issue? I have no idea. And I started worrying about, these things. And I learned that, sometimes you just need to be there, to give the gift of love, of, being there with someone. And that's an experience that has stayed with me for all these years after that,
So Alfonso, let me back up and ask, we always generally ask our guests what advice they would give a new hire. And I think what you just said about our new hires and that experience that you garnered is so important, so valuable. What would you like to say to them, to those that listen to the podcast, to get to learn more about the company?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I think I will recommend and tell the new hires, specifically those in the context of, being in a new class, those agents. What I remember when I was an agent, that motivated me every day to the best that I could was to really realize that you have the opportunity to live the mission at its fullest every day, many times, when you pick up the phone and and make the day a little bit better for the other person. I understand that it's difficult, but that realization of helping someone improving their lives, for me, it just gave me energy to keep going and improve and get better at hopefully making their lives a little bit better by fixing whatever issue they had.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know I was a little bit apprehensive because I'm always nervous in trying to do a good job describing the mission and your father's story, and to have you on the podcast has been a great joy. So thank you so much. And remind me the next time I ever see you in person to tell you the story of your younger brother, JP, on his first operational audit, because it's a fun story.
I definitely will, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I hope to see you in person soon. And really looking forward to getting back to the day-to-day in Qualfon.
Thanks, Alfonso. Bye-bye.
Right.
Oh, that was a great interview. I've got to be honest, Jeremy, I was nervous on this one, and it's strange for me to be nervous, but you saw the emails going back and forth between us. The family is very thoughtful.
Yes.
And, they're very, I mean, I guess the word is spiritual, and that I want to say, and it's, I feel the weight of wanting to do well for them. And I know you feel as well. So I don't feel as confident in this interview as I have in others, which is funny though. It is a funny place to be for me because that's not something I'm used to.
And I think to a person, right, whether it's Alfonso Sr. or Mary Carmen or JP or Alfonso Jr., they are all people of character, right? To me, that's what I sense is they're good people. And you get that when you're around them. And so like you, I'm the same way. I want to be, I want to be on my best behavior. Because,
you hit it. It's not the title, and it's not the position, and it's not that they're the owners of the company. It's that, in my experience, they feel like the best like I want to be as good a person as they exhibit themselves to be. I mean, I'll tell you, when I went to Cuatro Ciénegas, and the way they speak about Alfonso Sr., Mary Carmen, the family, just the love that is experienced because of the things that they have put into motion. And it's funny because I remember once it was with JP. He was kind of telling me the story of when his dad was hiring our CEO, Mike, and in that process, and how he was praying and thinking about that. And I remember him saying something along the lines of like, I'm going to paraphrase, but something about people's reaction to his dad. And I remember clocking it, thinking to myself, this is prior to me having met his father in person, ever having any idea, notion of the Gonzalez family, not having been at Summit. And so I remember thinking, that was kind of the same feeling that people generally have when they run into people in executive levels. The higher you go, the more intimidating it can be for people. So that's what I thought he meant when he had told me that. And then I go to Summit, and then I hear his father speak. And then I understood what he meant. You have a different reaction to that when you see someone living their mission, I guess, or living in such a state of grace that it just is very humbling.
Yeah. And the other word that comes to mind with the Gonzalez family is they're genuine. I mean, they're very genuine, good people, and that's just the sense I get when I'm around any of them. And it's great. And it was awesome to talk to, because I haven't talked to Alfonso for probably 4 or 5 years. So it was great just to talk to him again, just because I hadn't seen him in so long. So it was great. I really enjoyed that one.
Do you imagine if we ever get Alfonso Sr. on the podcast? I don't think I'll be able to construct a thought, because it's intimidating.
You won't be allowed to come, Marisol. Yeah.
That's fine. I'd love to just be a listener on that one. So thank you to everyone who tunes in and listens. I truly appreciate it. I know Jeremy does as well.
Thanks, Marisol. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mission Qualfon. Remember, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Mission Qualfon.